So we have Ed Beard from Digitas LBI all the way from London. You saw Remy from EMEA who came in earlier. Oh, we're missing. I'll sit. Yeah, you sit there. Yeah. And we have Dimitri Chuko from S7 Siberian Airlines all the way from Moscow. So gentlemen, quick, I don't have to introduce you because you've already introduced yourself, but maybe from Dimitri, tell us about yourself and your business very quickly so we can get into the discussion.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me on this panel. My name is Dmitry Chuko. I'm CEO of the company called S7 Travel Retail. We're a spin-off of the S7 Airlines, responsible for the online travel retailing plus mobile retailing, everything. Yeah.
Great. Ed?
Ed Beard from Digitas LBI. We're a global digitally focused marketing agency where we work across numerous sectors, so airlines like Qantas and Delta, hotels, Shangri-La, Premier Inn, retailers and financial services as well.
Great, and we know Remy already from EMEA. Gentlemen, it's been a fascinating presentation from David, and the first point I think is always a good place to start is with the concept of digital transformation. So, Dimitri, when it comes to S7 Siberian Airlines, what does digital transformation and what journey have you been on over the last number of years, both in retailing and in digital in general?
Yeah, first of all, Dave, thank you for the presentation. I'm a big supporter of the idea of your definition about the digital transformation. It's definitely not about the technology. It's not about IT. It's about mindset, about how the companies adapt themselves for the new age, new technologies, new ideas, new reality, or whatever. And I have a story actually, and it was like back in the 17th, 18th century, there was a company in the US. They produced whips for horses, actually. And this company was completely disrupted by train. When the train came, it was really profitable business, but they not exist anymore at all. And I think when we actually thinking about the business, each company need to have their own mission, and this mission have to be something about the value they provide to the end consumers. If we have no value, if we are just focusing on something different, that means the company have no idea when they have to move or what they have to do. And I think we went a really interesting way when we, back in I would say 10 years time, when we was a Siberian Airlines, and when we started to invest into the internet, we recognized that it's probably quite difficult to think about and compare the priorities about what aircraft are you buying, how you train your pilots, and on other side, which digital advertising agency you need to choose, which system you have to connect to your website, which CMS have to power your portal or whatever. And at this time we realized that probably will be good if we will spin this off to the separate company. And the mission of this company, we decided that we have to provide value for the end consumers to enhance their travel experience, to make it simple and joyful, actually. And that worked quite well, and I think that's was really powerful decision from the management team and for the S7 team. And now we're responsible for the few different digital channels, and that's bring definitely big value to the airline itself.
It's a very interesting approach to spin it off. And yeah. Speaking of approaches, I'm delighted to have Ed here because Ed is specifically Ed's on board here because he's got experience outside of the travel business and outside of the airline business and loyalty business, and specifically around retail. What are you seeing? And when we say retail in this place, we mean the high street. And what are you seeing in terms of transformation and customer journey in the high street?
So as a good example from financial services, high street banking, which you can think of there. So 3 or 4 years ago, I was working with one of the larger high street banks. They had a new loans product coming out, all very exciting, had a few new bells and whistles.
A loan product?
A loan, personal loan product, personal banking. And yet the systems hadn't quite caught up with the fact that customers should expect to be able to get the same rate everywhere. So as an individual, if you've been with them for 20 years, you get a different rate in the branch to the rate you get online to the rate you get on the telephone. And for an industry which has got trust issues to deal with, that's not a great place to be. So that's 3 or 4 years ago. I think with certainly some financial services, there's the rise of a job role, as it were, called the journey manager. So someone who's
a journey
manager,
okay.
customer journey manager, in some
customer
places.
journey manager, yeah.
Customer journey manager, who has a remit to go across all the various silos of the organisation to make sure that from a customer perspective, they're experiencing one brand, as it were, one company, and one decent experience.
So it's a role right across all the divisions.
Yes, and we've seen that with different levels of authority, to be honest. So in some companies, that role would have quite a strong mandate across all of the various silos. In other companies, that role would have a consultative one, as it were, but
an advisory capacity.
An advisory capacity, but nonetheless, it's been driven by a need to make sure that the customer is getting the best experience of that particular brand, rather than the bank can serve the customer in this way, and that's how we're going to do it.
Very interesting. One of the things from David's talk is really around data, and I think the audience really was very receptive to what you were talking about with AMIA and data. Do you want to just maybe talk us a little bit about how you're thinking? I mean, your title says transformation in it. And where is the sort of transformation occurring in AMIA in terms of your thinking about data?
So one thing that I would say, obviously, is that we're quite privileged as a loyalty company to request our members to log in because they're part of the program. So logging in gives us access to the customer profile. And so since the beginning of our journey, the customer profile was kind of the basis of engaging with those members. And using transactional data, we were able to obviously put together a whole suite of data sets that would help us understand the financials of our business, the gross billings, the unit cost, the free cash flow, and kind of drive decision making to make sure that all those levers were appropriately used and leveraged. Now that we are looking at the digital transformation, we're now mapping the customer journey, as I showed earlier this morning, and really setting forward the KPIs and the answers that we're trying to get from the data, and now capturing the data sets that are going to help us answer these specific questions, specifically the social elements, which we're now starting to bring into our environment and trying to leverage that further. Behavioral data, capturing all of the data elements and making effective use of these through the events that a member will go through as they go from inspiration to transactional to then preparing for the travel experience, and then coming back and telling the balance of our members how exciting that was and how much he wants to do it again. So that's kind of been our journey and our continued quest to leverage the data.
One of your big topics, David, was around innovation, and indeed, if we have anything that we're talking about in detail, particularly this afternoon, it's around innovation. And I love your comment about it used to be top down and this is the idea and we're going like this. Can you give us examples of other examples you saw in your research besides JCPenney, people who've kind of done the wrong thing and were misguided?
Well, a lot of what I get into that in that chapter in the book is a lot of the challenge of shifting this model of innovation from the top-down decision-making to this rapid experimentation. As you can gather, it's really a change in culture that's necessary. I mean, it's a different methodology, but to support it, you have to have buy-in within the organization in terms of who's taking on risks and how. I mean, part of the reason why the old model works is because the people who are taking the risk are at the top, and you are always taking that risk. If you're the CEO, if things work out, great, and if not, you're the latest CEO of Ford Motors was just asked to step down because he was pushing autonomous cars just not fast enough. So that's pretty easy, but if you start telling all of your middle managers and other people who are down and really close and customer facing and have a great deal of insight and say, hey, I want you to be experimenting and trying all these things, most companies, their response is, yeah, right, no thank you. I don't want to risk my quarterly bonus. So you have to change your incentive structures and you have to do things to really communicate that effective risk-taking is going to be rewarded and even expected. And I talk about a translation, in Silicon Valley, everyone likes to say fail fast. Just as long as you're failing fast all the time, that's great. And if you're two people with $100 in a garage, fine, but you can't translate that exactly to a big business, right? So the model I talk about in my book is failing smart, and it's a 4-part test that you need within your organization. One is when you try something new, when you experiment, do you learn from it, right? If the idea didn't work out, did you learn why it didn't work out? I've worked with so many companies where they say, oh, we had a pilot, and we tried this idea. We took this one retail franchise, and we went into a new market, and we just did a pilot, and it wasn't working, so we cut our losses and got out quick. And I say, okay, well, that's good. You didn't lose a lot of money. So what was wrong? Why did it work in Costa Rica and not Nicaragua? Complete silence. No one has any idea why. I said, well, you got to learn from the experiment. Second, you have to apply that learning to your strategy going forward. Third, you have to share that learning across the organization. That's often the hardest. In big companies, when something goes wrong, we have all these elaborate ways of hiding the bodies. No one ever knows about that product that didn't launch or that initiative that just got extended, and then was just sort of buried in the budgeting chart. And the fourth is that you want to make sure that when you do learn through a failure, that it just happened as quickly and cheaply as possible. And that was that innovation cycle chart that I showed earlier, is making sure that the learning happens without you wasting unnecessary time and money, that you got to that learning quickly and on limited resources, and that's perfectly fine. In fact, I've seen companies where that's part of what they do, is that they're really communicating those kinds of principles to their managers, and doing things like Tata Group, for example, based out of India. They've had for years a series of innovation prizes, because they've got like 100 operating units. And so every year they can compete for the best new product innovation, the best service innovation, yada, yada. And then one year their CEO said, we're going to have a new award for the best failure. Right? They called it the Dare to Try Award. It was the most, you boldly tried an idea, it didn't work out, but it was the kind of innovative thinking we want to support, and that you manage the failure effectively. The first year, how many people do you think applied for it? How many companies out of 100? I think it was like 3. Normally they get hundreds of applications, multiple applications per company. But they picked the best of those 3, and they brought them on stage, and the CEO heaped praise, just as much praise on them as they did on these amazing breakthrough innovations, and talked very specifically about why it was a good investigation of opportunity and why they managed it appropriately. And after a few years, they actually now have more applications for that than for any other category. And typically, the winner of the Dare to Try, the Best Failure Award, is often the same group who wins one of the other Best Successful Innovation Awards, because it's coming out of the same process. But that's the kind of thing you've got to drill in, that you've really got people to change that mindset and shift the culture within the organization if you're going to make the innovation process work.
Well, I was just thinking, because, Dimitri, you're the leader in your organization, and what sort of mindset, what sort of processes are in place when you're trying to lead the team to the next level? How do you approach that?
I guess it's quite difficult, but I think I will came from the other angle. Okay, when a few years ago we started to look deeply into the Agile and into the methodology we're using for the development process, etc. And some time later, I came to the conclusion that Agile is probably not the methodology we're using for the development. It has to be the organization mindset itself. So the company have to be agile, have to transform itself, how to evaluate their steps and move forward based on the decision, based on the experience we're making, and move forward by the incrementals, which bring the value to the company itself and to the consumers. And I think what I'm trying to do inside of the company, I'm trying to give this vision to my team and ask them to communicate to each other, or exchange the opinions, exchange the files, sometimes exchange the plans, or etc. To move the company forward by the incremental pieces, adding these incremental pieces to our products, our services, etc. And that's gave the results.
Very good, very good. So Ed, if we just take, say, pure UK retailing or international retail, can you give us some sort of best-in-class examples of what you've seen, both in terms of, because we've said digital transformation is not just about technology, the leadership aspect, the change management aspects, we've seen it, some examples here, but stuff you might have seen in the retail end, and we could take inspiration here as travel people.
Certainly from a kind of an inspirational perspective, a visionary one almost, Amazon, cliched as it is to give as an example, I think is a fascinating place to aim for from a retailer's perspective. So when Jeff Bezos speaks of Amazon Prime, he's quite clear about its role, and he says, it should be so good that you'd be irresponsible not to have it. And I think, and it's a great example of how you want to load your retail environment and your engagement with individual customers so that they're not going to go anywhere else. Sure, you can strip the inefficiency out of the processes. Sure, you can add a little bit of value in. But actually, as a retailer, they're going after everyone's business. They have, I believe, it's about 1 in 3 online shopping journeys in the States start at Amazon.com, and they've done that by just adding so much into the individual value that people get from having a relationship with that brand. So to David's definition of a strategy, of transformation, they haven't really had to transform. They started and grew up that way, so they haven't been on the painful process. But the notion of someone effectively heading to a subscription business where why would you bother going anywhere else is, I think, is a good place to be thinking of.
I think one of the things with Amazon we found quite interesting is OpenJoe. We've just signed a deal with Amazon Web Services, and I'm just observing it, how they've built this business from scratch as an add-on, and they sort of like transform themselves by this business that was buried within an existing business. It's been fascinating looking at that.
Because again, web services is a good example, a bit like Airbnb is, have your own problem and work out a solution to it. Web services, I believe, came from a place where they couldn't find anywhere to scale to run the size of their own operation, so they thought they'd be better off building their own. And solve your own problems and you're solving other people's, and now it's one of the biggest offerings of that sort.
It's solving a problem of one is a very interesting one. So just on data and personalization, I mean, how good do you think we can get on that over the next couple of years, and how good are AMEA looking to get with that over the next couple of years?
We're in the midst of doing considerable investment into automation. Obviously, if you're going to want to be very specific and as personalized as can be, not only being relevant but also being very intimate with your members, you're going to have to use a fair amount of tools to provide some recommendation on the basis of past behaviors, doing some predictive analytics and understanding, what's next, what's relevant, what's intimate for that member. So the investments we're making in our platforms, not only in the OpenJoe retail environment and being relevant as the member is doing transactional data, but as all those trigger events occur during their life cycle, if we have the tools to be able to gather that data and in real time spin up some offering that would be appropriate for that member in that particular segment, or for that member in specifically, because they understand I like Guinness and they'll offer me a trip to Dublin very specifically. Those are the sort of investments we're making now, and we're hoping to see the outcome of that in the short term.
Well, I think of the phrase, so good it would be impossible not to have it when I think of a Guinness, so it's a very good metaphor. So we want to wrap up because we're standing between some people and their lunch, and that's always a very bad idea. But can you give us, say, a top tip, a takeaway for everybody in the audience, and I'll just go from left to right to left from David. Just, guys, think like this. So just a soundbite for everybody for them to walk away with and chew over dinner.
One of the things that I find is a lot of companies I talk with are trying to figure out their digital strategy, which is, I think, a really important question, but I always start with putting it back to them and saying, well, what is your corporate strategy? What is your vision or your levers for growth that you see in general in your business? and sometimes that's more or less already well established, any digital strategy needs to grow out of that, right? It's not something else on the side. So this is part of simply how you are going to grow your business in the digital environment. So think about really getting clarity on where is your business going, where are the needs of your customers going, where are you competing, what are you uniquely good at offering? And if you have already ideas in place about that, that should be where you start from in developing any sort of a holistic digital strategy. If you look at Domino's and what they did versus General Electric, an industrial company that's very much focused now on reinventing themselves, as they call it, a digital industrial company. And how do we focus back on certain core areas that are all heavy equipment? It's power plant reactors, and it's train engines and jet aircraft engines and heavy equipment in hospitals. And how do we embed data in all of these and software operating systems? But it's all about GE saying, what is at our core? Where are we really good at? Domino's saying, we were always a pizza delivery business. And then saying, okay, how does technology and data and software and all these changes change that? How does it help us do that better, our strategy? So get back to that core of where your business and its value is and what the needs of your customers are. And then look at all these incredible digital opportunities through that lens. And that's going to be how you figure out a unique digital strategy for your business, rather than just trying to sort of copy what you see, cases and conferences and slide decks and articles on the web.
Excellent, thank you. Dimitri.
Yeah, absolutely. I will adjust that the digital strategy have to be based on the overall company strategy itself. So we as a companies have to decide where we're going to, what's our mission, what's our goals, what's our value, what we bring to the customer to make them more loyal, more happy, more attractive to us, etc. And that's of course very important. That the digital transformation, it's like mindset, definitely. It's not about the technology. It's changing the mindset and leadership and et cetera, et cetera. And I think what's also important is that I would say the company need to disrupt themselves and the industry with the disruptive ideas as well. That's very important to move forward. Not always, not looking into the back. It's always better to look forward and disrupt something with something new.
To look forward. Ed, in a nutshell?
Look at your business, your sector, and the benefits that those provide through the eyes of the customer, and work on solving their problems, because then Uber versus Toyota, if you're solving the customer's need, you're getting into a different place.
So the eyes of the customer.
Eyes of the customer.
Excellent. Maybe?
It can be obviously quite overwhelming with the amount of transformation going on. I would say, be extremely focused on the sort of value that you want to bring to your clients, our members specifically. Be nimble, be prepared to pivot and adapt, because things are moving fast. So that would be my recommendation.
Great stuff. Gentlemen, on behalf of OpenJaw, thank you very much for taking part in the panel. Folks, we're wrapped up for the morning session. Lunch is served right through the door there. And we'll be back here alive and kicking at 2 o'clock with more action. But lunch is served just through the doors there. And we'll see you after lunch. Thanks a lot for your time.